Having completed the research proposal, you are likely aware that you must conduct two forms of primary research for the final project. While you watch this presentation, keep in mind that the primary research process is similar to the writing process. For success, both take careful planning, background research, and refining. Use this presentation as a means of thinking critically about your final project and the primary research process it will entail. Apply the concepts of primary research within the context of your own final project. Likely, at this point, you have already thought about your own primary research. With this presentation, take those thoughts one step further. Explore why your final project requires primary research. Think about what you can accomplish with primary research that you were unable to accomplish with secondary research. Finally, draw upon your knowledge of your final project to understand the purpose that primary research will serve. We will begin by discussing how primary research can be used to support your work for the final project. While these uses of primary research and examples are valid applications, do not feel like the list or examples are all-encompassing. Simply think of them as a tool for understanding the goals of primary research in terms of your final project. After covering primary research uses, we will explore the types of data generated by primary research, and then compare and contrast the different collection methods. Next, we will go over some types of questions to avoid when you compose your own primary research questions. And finally, we will outline some tips for success for both primary research and the final project in general. Primary research can be particularly useful when you want to learn about a problem or opportunity that does not have a wealth of published or specific information. Perhaps the problem or opportunity is related to a recent event that has not been thoroughly studied. Or perhaps the problem or opportunity is more widespread, but you're interested in how it plays out at the local level. In both cases, primary research can fill gaps in available information and thus in your understanding. In understanding a problem or opportunity, you might also want more information about the strategies or materials being implemented elsewhere and how they are being implemented. Let's explore an example. Perhaps a student plans on writing a recommendation report for an office based on a problem or opportunity he or she identified as an intern in that office. Conducting a preliminary survey or interview would allow him or her to establish that problem or opportunity beyond personal anecdotal experiences. It substantiates the problem or opportunity with data and evidence collected through primary research. Primary research can also be useful as a means of further developing and exploring solutions to a given problem or opportunity. For recommendation reports, perhaps you have used secondary research to come up with a list of options for addressing a particular problem. Perhaps you built this list with models and solutions that already exist and have been implemented elsewhere. However, you can use primary research to identify which options would be most suitable for your audience or to understand if and how any of these options fail to fully meet the needs of your audience. For SOPs or technical background reports, primary research can help you compose your document based on models already in use. For example, if you write an SOP for a task carried out in a particular office, perhaps you can use primary research to explore the procedures already in use in that office. Through primary research, you can identify strategies that are working well and areas that need improvement. You can also identify whether you will need to implement particular formatting techniques or account for individual preferences when you compose your final project. You might also find primary research to be a useful tool for testing solutions. For recommendation reports, you can use primary research to establish whether a solution is feasible in a given setting. You can also use it to acquire details about the preferences of your audiences. With these details, you can compare and contrast solutions based specifically on those preferences. For SOPs, technical background reports, and onboarding manuals, you can use primary research to establish criteria that will make the document successful. For example, you can collect data about why an existing procedure lacks clarity and then use that data to create a procedure that is more clear. Regardless of what kind of report you write for your final project, you should consider the type of data that it would benefit from. Through primary research, you can collect qualitative data, quantitative data, or both. Qualitative data usually takes a verbal or written form, whereas quantitative data usually takes the form of numbers. Qualitative data is collected through primary research on a respondent's ideas, preferences, goals, attitudes, or beliefs as they relate to the topic being researched. Primary research methods that tend to generate qualitative data include interviews, focus groups, or observations. For your primary research, you can use interviews with an audience member or other involved party to generate this kind of descriptive data. Quantitative data is collected through primary research methods like surveys, which involve responses that are preset or can be categorized for analysis. Quantitative data can be useful for understanding trends in ideas, preferences, goals, attitudes, or beliefs as they relate to the topic being researched. For example, you can conduct a survey to determine how many freshmen got lost walking to class during the first week. Such a survey would allow you to quantify the number of freshmen that had that experience, and would therefore generate quantitative data. However, a one-on-one interview with an individual freshman who got lost walking to class during the first week could generate qualitative data. You could find out specifically where they were coming from and going to when they got lost. You could find out if they participated in the campus tour or if they even knew that tour existed. This is more qualitative because you can describe the experience but you cannot quantify it. As mentioned before, interviews are a primary research method that generate qualitative data. Interviews are defined as question and answer sessions that take place in person, by email, or by phone and can be one-on-one or with a small group. For your own primary research, you may find interviews useful if you need in-depth technical information or expert opinions from specific individuals. Further, if you are looking to meet specific individuals' needs or preferences, you can use interviews to identify these. Ultimately, interviews will give you qualitative data from a specific perspective. Since the data is qualitative, within your final project you will most likely describe it rather than attempt to display it graphically. As mentioned before, surveys are primary research methods that tend to generate quantitative data, but can generate some qualitative data depending on how you structure the survey questions. Surveys are defined as online or written question sets distributed to a large population with the goal of learning their opinions, attitudes, or ideas. For your own primary research, you may find surveys useful if you need data from a large sample size to better understand a problem or opportunity. Further, if you're looking to gather opinions, attitudes, or ideas from many different groups, surveys can help you accomplish that in less time than several interviews might take. Ultimately, surveys will give you quantitative data that can be represented graphically. If you have free response survey questions, they may also give you some qualitative data that you can describe within your final project. You are likely already familiar with usability tests as a result of the technical instructions you composed and tested earlier this semester. Usability tests are conducted with the intended users of the tool to evaluate usability problems, collect data, and learn more about user needs. For example, if the final project is an SOP, usability testing might involve giving the intended users of the SOP a section of it, having them complete an associated task, and acquiring feedback. Such a test can help you understand how the SOP affects the users, what improvements would improve user experiences, and more. Keep in mind, if you plan to do usability testing as one of your two forms of primary research, it will be essential that you plan ahead because you will need to have a final draft of the final project to share with your users during usability testing. There are certain classes of questions that you should avoid incorporating in your interviews, surveys, or usability tests. Below this presentation, you will find definitions and examples, as well as further reading for these question classes. You should review these definitions prior to taking the quiz, as the quiz may ask you to identify or classify poorly written questions. Hopefully at this point in the presentation, you realize that primary research and the final project will not be minor tasks. Often when we conduct primary research, we tend to focus on the data collection and forget about other important facets of it. However, before you even begin data collection, you must provide a rationale, research method, and the target individual or group you will be researching. Make initial contact with any individuals or groups now or very soon to be certain that you will be able to collect data from them. Have backup primary research plans that you can rely on if one of your other two options falls through. Formulate well-written questions that will generate answers of use to you. And finally, keep a paper trail so that you can be as transparent as possible in submitting your primary research. If you reach out to individuals by email, save screenshots of your emails so that you can submit all of your work you do for primary research. Best of luck with your final project.